First, a mesh is created using the Mesh panel, which is opened from the Mesh menu. All displayed surfaces are selected using the Extended Entity Selection menu. The mesh is then created using the criteria already set in the panel. After creating the mesh, the elements are checked using the Check Elements panel, which is opened from the Mesh menu. The length of the elements is checked to see how many have a length of less than 1. The elements that are highlighted on the model can be easier to see with the display in wireframe mode. Notice the elements that fail. The topology will be edited to correct some of these issues. The mesh is hidden from view to refine the geometry. The first step for this example is to combine points to remove a short edge. The functionality to edit the point is found in the Geometry menu. With the Replace subpanel open, the Point to Move is selected first. With the Point to Move selected, the Retained Point selector is activated. The Point to Retain is now selected on the model. With the point selected, the Point to Move is now replaced with the retained point. The short edge is removed and the 2 points were merged into a single point. Next, the points representing holes that were previously in the model need to be hidden using the Suppress subpanel. The points are selected to suppress them on the model. The points are suppressed on the model and will no longer be taken into account when the mesh is generated. With the points edited, the surfaces will be edited by opening the Surface Edit panel from the Geometry menu. A surface will be split using the Normal to Edge functionality by activating the Node selector. A point is selected to represent the start of the surface trim. A line is selected to which the trim will be normal to from the selected point. Note that the surface is trimmed from the point normal to the selected line. The process is repeated to trim the surface a second time. The surface is now trimmed to produce a better quality mesh in this area. The surface also needs to be trimmed in this area to produce a better mesh. A node is selected to start the trim. The line is selected to create the trimmed surface. The process is repeated for a second trim in this area. Another surface needs to be trimmed using the Trim with Surfaces/Planes subpanel. For this example, the With Plane option is used to create the trim. With the Surface selector active, the surfaces are selected on the model. To create the plane to trim, the N1 selector is activated. To select the edge on which points will be created, the left mouse button is held down to ensure the correct edge is selected. With the edge selected, the nodes for N1 and N2 are selected on the line. For this example, a node is placed at the center of the hole to create the plane. Since no node is present, a temporary node is created using the Distance panel. The 3-node subpanel is used to create the node. Holding the left mouse button down and moving the mouse over the edge of the hole, it is selected to make sure all points lie on that edge. With the edge selected, the 3 nodes are selected on the edge of the hole. With the 3 nodes selected, a temporary node is created at the circle center. Once the node is created, return back to the Surface Edit panel. Activate the B selector and select the temporary node at the center of the circle. The surface is then trimmed to split the hole and create a better mesh. Now, the edges of some surfaces need to be suppressed to create a better mesh. The Surface Edge panel is opened from the Geometry menu. With the Suppress subpanel open, the edges to suppress are selected on the model. The edges of the surface are suppressed so the mesh does not take them into account when the mesh is created. The mesh is now turned back on to see how the mesh has updated from the changes made to the geometry. With the Check Element panel open, the length check is run again. The mesh is turned to wireframe to see if any elements fail the check. Notice that most of the elements that failed were fixed by the topology revisions. Even though the mesh was updated as the changes were made, a new mesh is created for the part. The mesh panel is opened through the Mesh menu. The new mesh is created using the QI Optimize subpanel to create a higher quality mesh. The criteria is edited using the Edit Criteria dialog box. For this example, the target element size is set to 2.5 for the mesh. The changes are applied and the dialog box is closed to return to the panel. All of the displayed surfaces are selected for the new mesh creation. The new mesh is created from the updated geometry using the QI Optimize criteria. The shaded with mesh lines display mode is turned back on to see the new mesh on the model. A final check of the mesh with the QI Optimize panel is performed. The panel is opened from the Mesh menu. Notice that the Comp QI is very low for the mesh and no elements fail the checks that were performed. The mesh is of good quality for this model.